The fourth topic, and this will be my last, and then I'll open it up to questions. There already have been some posted. And that is kind of a consequence of all this increased activism. Whether it leads to an eventual explosion or not, you're all facing more activism, more strikes, more organizing activity, and other kind of formal and informal actions being taken by groups of employees, collective actions. You need people who know the law, know how to respond to those collective actions. And what I've learned is many organizations don't have what they refer to as a backbench. They don't have veterans who have negotiated contracts, who are experienced in labor law, who have dealt with the kind of conflicts that emerge in labor relations. Dave Lipsky and I ran a consortium at the request of 4 large corporations, Boeing, Alcoa, Harley-Davidson, International Paper. For several years, we were convening meetings of those firms where they sent employees who they wanted to get more training and to learn from one another, primarily, not just from us, about how to respond to collective action, because they felt they were the senior people, the old guard, often white males like myself who had grown up in the field of labor relations. They were all retiring, right? Labor relations isn't a catchy field. It's not perceived as glamorous as human resource management among our students. Business schools aren't offering labor relations courses as frequently as they did in the past. And that, with retirements, has led to the dearth of experienced professionals who know how to deal with labor relations. Okay, so what can you do? What's my advice? I think there's 2 routes to respond to this absence, deficiency in the backbench. One is to turn to university training programs. I'm saying this not just because it's self-serving. ILR and Cornell have an extensive array of programs. Some are online, some are in person. There are other universities that have such programs. There are other entities, FMCS, Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, and others provide some kind of basic courses in labor relations. People can be sent to those and have experiential learning, not just listening to someone like myself just talk, but to engage in simulations and exercises, understanding the law, understanding negotiations, understanding how to respond to collective actions. And then the other advice I have, and I'm sure many of you have thought of this, is rely on internal rotation. Many, not all of your organizations, but many have parts of their organizations where there is some unionism. And you ought to be thinking about ways to rotate people through those parts of the organization so they can have a real experience with unions and everyday labor relations. Again, bolstered potentially by some training that they've received, but there's nothing better than a combination of sort of more, quote, classroom training, even though much of it's now delivered online, and actually having experience with negotiation and learning how to react to collective actions. All right, so I've made it through in my 20 minutes as promised. I'm now going to start responding to your questions and encourage you to post more. I have a little Q&A box there. And the first one from Florian, I hope it's okay if I mention your names when they're posted, ask, are there any particular corporate policies that tend to trigger collective actions? And I've talked a little bit about this, and that is, again, what seems to be upsetting people are things happening at the corporate level. We've seen it at Disney most recently, right? Disney, as you may know, has a lot of their staff are unionized, and they're upset about LGBT policies by the company in Florida and elsewhere. I sort of repeat what I heard from a barista who was leading organizing in one of those Buffalo coffee shops. She was upset about staffing norms that were being set by the corporation. In her discussions with her supervisor said, yeah, I want to do something different, but I can't go outside the corporate guidelines. Sometimes the issues have also been scheduling issues that are mandated by the corporation, and they don't have the flexibility at the local level to find sort of solutions that meet both corporate needs and the individual worker needs. So, and again, it's also some of it's atmospherics. I think people are upset about the inequality, the high earnings of the executives, the stock gains that get now reported in the press, and they're expressing concerns about that. And again, I think many of you have your own experience with this, and I'd encourage CAHRS, if you're interested at some point, maybe the thing to do would be just sit around and share notes amongst yourselves about what you're facing. I wouldn't be surprised if, again, it's these kind of elevated social issues, sometimes with workplace direct consequences that are triggering action. Okay, so here's another question from someone, and that's great information, very helpful. Thank you very much. In terms of corporate policies, was there anything from your research in particular that companies should be mindful of? Is it more flexibility, more work-life balance, attendance policies versus strict adherence to maybe an antiquated employee manual? Yeah, I mean, my own advice, the way what I raise regularly in the labor relations training that I do is think about problem-solving solutions that meet the needs of the organization, but also respond to employee concerns. On scheduling, of course, it's more flexibility, but it doesn't mean it's unlimited flexibility. There's lots of ways to add more. People have, incredible difficulty meeting work-life balance issues now, not only those raised by the pandemic, but traditional family, dual career issues. And it just seems some organizations just get stuck in the rigidity of corporate policy, and it's just not going to fly anymore with this younger, feisty workforce, which again is supported in their feistiness by the tightening of the labor market. You just got to face it, the labor market is tighter, and you need to find ways, again, to problem solve and look for solutions that don't just cave into employee requests, just don't uphold strictly, rigid, standardized corporate policies, but find something in between.